friends! Welcome back to another video. Recently, I've been getting so many messages on LinkedIn from random people like asking, how did I get into grad school? What is the application process like? If I have any tips on how to get in. So I figured it was only appropriate to make a video on some of my tips that I have to anyone applying to grad school. Just a disclaimer, these are just things that I did and I was fortunate enough to get in. So I'm not saying that like, if you follow these strictly, you are guaranteed to get into grad school, but there's a chance that if you follow some of these, you might have a higher chance of getting in. Getting into grad school in general is just really difficult because of like the limited amount of capacity that different departments and every institution has. A lot of the time, it just comes down to a lottery, basically. So, if you've applied to grad school previously and you didn't get in, please don't take it to heart. It doesn't mean that you are not smart enough or that you are not capable. It's just that a lot of the time there just isn't enough room to accept everyone. And a lot of departments only really accept like 4 or 5 students. Without further ado, let's get into the video. This video is strictly going to be on the application process. If you are applying for an astrophysics program, a physics program, or astronomy program, they're all relatively the same. Once you've come to the conclusion that you want to apply to grad school, make sure that it is wholeheartedly what you want to do. If there's like the smallest part of you that is like second guessing whether it's actually for you or not for you, I would probably take a minute to like reevaluate and just to be 100% sure. Because one, grad school is hard, it's a huge commitment, and you don't want to be stuck in a program for the next 5 to 7 years if it's not something that like you wholeheartedly see yourself doing. So if you are 100% committed to furthering your education and putting all of your time and energy into academia as well as research, then great. Apply to a graduate program in physics or astronomy and follow along with these next steps. So after you come to the conclusion that you do want to apply to grad school, the first thing that you're going to want to do is come up with a list of schools that you would like to apply to. Typically, most people say that you want to try to apply to like anywhere from 15 to 20 schools. And that maybe doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but you also have to keep in mind there's usually an application fee with every single application. So, just keep in mind in terms of finances, what you can and can't afford. And the whole process is just really expensive in general. So like if you're applying to like 15 schools and every application is like $100, you're looking at $1,500 right there that you're gonna spend on applications. And, you are probably amazing and will get into all 15 of them, but there's a chance that you might only get into 1 or 2. So then like, it can kind of get costly. For example, like I think I applied to maybe 15, 14-ish schools and I got into 2. So it can be pretty tough. One piece of advice that I do have for trying to avoid paying all of the ridiculous application fees. Honestly, application fees are so stupid. Like you're paying an application fee to basically keep their application website generated. That's such bullshit. Anyway, if you want to try to avoid paying those ridiculous application fees, then reach out to a random member in the faculty or like the administration office and see if they will offer fee waivers. Fee waivers are just a way to bypass having to pay for the application. So a lot of schools that I applied to, I got fee waivers, and I also got a scholarship or a grant to assist in paying for a bunch of application fees. So it's very easy to get them. You just have to reach out and you will most likely be given one. Sometimes people can be stingy about it though. So beware of those. Another thing that you probably want to keep in mind whenever you are narrowing down your list of where you want to apply to, if there are certain requirements. For example, do they require taking the GRE, which a lot of places don't require you take the GRE. However, I know that there are some physics programs that still require GRE scores. So if you see that a school you want to apply to requires a GRE, you should sign up like immediately to take the GRE, or just like, if you don't want to take it at all, move on to the next school, cross it off your list. The next thing that you also want to look for is some places will have like specific like undergrad course requirements. So I know I applied to Princeton and they required undergrad courses like thermodynamics as well as like statistical mechanics. Like you had to have those two courses in your undergraduate transcript for them to even look at your application. So just a couple things to keep in mind. My piece of advice is that once you've narrowed down all of the schools that you want to apply to, is you put them all into a Google spreadsheet or like create a Google Doc with a table listed and list all of your schools one by one. So that way it's easier for you to visualize. You can see everything. Also, this will have a purpose later on in the video once I get to it. The next step in the graduate application process is going to be finding a potential supervisor that you want to work with. For example, if you are into cosmology, what I would recommend doing is going through the department website and scrolling through the list of faculty, and through there, all of the faculty will have like a bio and like a little bit about their research. Sometimes they will have a website and they'll have like paper publications or like some of their students that they work with, some of their interests within the field. And what you want to do is you want to look through those bios in great detail to make sure that your goals and your areas of research align with theirs. For example, if you want to apply to Princeton and they don't have anybody working in like high energy astrophysics, there's no point to apply there. Because if they're going to read on your application, you're interested in high energy astrophysics, and they're like, well, we don't have anybody that works in that area, so next. Like I said, the application process, it is very, very, very stiff. And, you know, they're trying to find any ways that they can to narrow down the amount of applications that they have to like read thoroughly, or the amount of people that they have to consider. So please, please, please make sure that there is someone in the department that studies or is working on exactly what you want to work on. And then the next piece of advice, this is the most important part. Reach out to that professor immediately. Grad applications are typically due at like the beginning of December. Some of them are even due as early as November 1st. Typically they're due in early December. So when you're starting this application process and like looking through all the schools that you want to, I would say start in August or so. Start as early as possible. And then as soon as you know what schools you want to apply for, you have a list of potential supervisors that you want to work with, reach out to them and ask them if they are accepting new students. If you put in your personal statement that you want to work with a certain professor and they're not accepting students, they're most likely not going to accept you. There's no point in wasting your time or your money applying to that program if the supervisor you want to work with is not accepting students. So please make sure that you send them like a follow-up email. And like, professors, they're very, very busy, so don't be disheartened if you don't hear from them back within a week or so. Chances are that your message just got lost in their email inbox or something like that. So send them a follow-up email and hope that they respond. If they don't respond at all, chances are they're probably not accepting students. So I would just move on to the next, or find another faculty member within the department that you could possibly see yourself working on. But yes, like I said, most important, please, please, please don't waste your time applying to a school that has a professor that's not accepting students. It's just not worth it. The next part is going to be contacting your references, people who are going to be writing your letters of recommendation. So a reference typically is going to be like a faculty member, a mentor that you have, a research advisor, a professor that, you know, you did really well in their class, you know, that can be able to speak for you and how smart you are and intelligent you are and how capable you are of succeeding in grad school. You would want to reach out to your referees very early on, so that way they can get your letter of rec submitted on time. This is another disheartening thing. If you don't get your referee to send your letter of rec in on time, your application won't be considered. So it's super important to let your referees know way ahead of time so they can put it on their schedule and know to come back to it later, so that way you will be considered. One thing that I did is I made a Google spreadsheet. Like I said earlier in the video, I made a Google spreadsheet and it had a list of all of the universities that I wanted to apply to, as well as the application deadlines. And once that was all finalized, I sent it to my referees ASAP, so that way they could mark it on their calendars and they knew ahead of time, and so on and so forth. And I would also let them know every time I submitted an application. The institution you're applying to will send an email to your referee letting them know here's where they submit their letters. So I would also let them know, like, hey, you just got an email from Princeton, you just got an email from UW, you just got an email from the Max Planck Institute. So that way it keeps them on top of it and hopefully they don't forget. Another thing that I would do is maybe when it's about 2 weeks or so before your application is due, send them a reminder with the spreadsheet again in case they lost it. Send them an email again, reminding them, hey, this deadline is upcoming. Please make sure, you get your letter submitted. The application process will consist of you submitting a transcript, personal statement, a CV, which is basically just like an academic resume. And sometimes some institutions will give you like additional prompts or like essays that they want you to write. I think when I applied to Michigan State, they gave me like 2 or 3 random essays that they wanted me to submit. So just be aware of that. And they'll also ask you for like personal information, demographics, and so on and so forth. My tips for a personal statement are to try to make them like as personable as possible. You don't really want your personal statement to sound like your CV. I wouldn't have your personal statement necessarily be like just a list of things that you do. Like they also want to see your outside interests. What do you do, outside of physics and astronomy? What makes you a normal person? Like what inspires you? They're also looking for like a bit of enthusiasm. They also want to see your reasoning as to why you want to be in graduate school. And I highly recommend making that as enthusiastic as possible so, they can really get a feel of like your passion. Not only that, it's very, very, very important to put where you see yourself in 10 years and how this PhD program is going to help you get closer to achieving your goals that you have set for the future. And then another very important thing that you want to put in your personal statement are potential supervisors that you see yourself working with. At the end of your personal statement, before you get to your conclusions and so on and so forth, I would make sure that you put, like if I were to be selected for whatever graduate program, I could really see myself working with Dr. So-and-so and so. Our areas of research align in X, Y, and Z. I'm looking forward to working with this person to do blah, 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 blah. So they want to see that you're very familiar with the department, familiar with the research that goes on, and they want to see how you can be integrated into their research group and be successful. Biggest tip that I will give about personal statements are, and I've seen so many people do this, please try to avoid doing this. Please try to avoid like the really like corny quotes of like, oh, I want to be an astrophysicist because I remember being 5 years old, looking up at the stars in the night sky and being so amazed. Everybody puts that on their application. Like you would be surprised how many people put that on their application. And it's so like cheesy and cliche that faculty are so tired of reading it. I remember my undergraduate supervisor was like, I am going to scream if I read one more application that starts with, when I was a kid looking up at the night sky. So yeah, try to avoid doing that. The other piece of writing that you're going to have included in your application is a curriculum vitae, CV for short. And like I said, it's an academic resume. So when you're creating your resume, I think the best way to go about this is to like Google a CV template. But basically what you're going to want to put on it, is the institution that you are graduating from with your bachelor's or your master's, your GPA, and then you'll want to put like supplementary course material that you've taken. So, you'll want to put, I've taken physics 1, 2, thermo, quantum, modern, optics, like all of those physics classes that are relevant for graduate school. On there, you're also going to want to put if you have like publications that you have done or been a part of in your undergraduate experience or your master's experience. So, you know, you can just put like the title, a short description of what you've done. Another thing to put on your CV are if you've gone to conferences before and you've given talks or posters, that's another thing that you can also put onto your CV. And you can find like the specific formatting. If you are bilingual or if you speak multiple languages, that is also a great thing to put on a CV as well. I think it's mainly just to kind of see you in like a professional sense. Once you've completed all of those like writing materials, I think the most important thing to do is make sure that your supervisor looks over all of it. Because, you know, your supervisor or your mentor, your teacher, they are faculty members, and chances are they've been in a committee or an admissions committee for graduate applications, so they know the right things to look for and the wrong things to look for within your applications. And then after all of that, you'll be ready to submit. Once you've submitted your application, then the next thing to do is wait until decision time. So usually decisions start being made by, I want to say late January, early February. Sometimes they can even continue out into like March and April. Please don't be discouraged if you apply to grad school and you don't get in anywhere. It's just really tough. Like at UW, we got over 400 applications and we can only accept around 5 students. So at one point, it literally just becomes a lottery. Like there are so many students that are more than capable of pursuing a PhD program here, but we just don't have the capacity to do so. And it's very common for people to apply their first time and not get anywhere, but the second time, usually students have better luck. So please don't feel discouraged. Please don't give up, or you can always try again the following year. Once you get accepted, usually you will get a letter saying, oh, congratulations. Typically, a lot of institutions will have interviews. The interview process is nothing super scary, but it is a way to kind of narrow down some of their top applicants. So to their final shortlisted group, they will send out emails asking you to schedule an interview with them. And the whole purpose of the interview is that they just want to see that you are actually who you say you are. Did you actually complete this research project? Can you give an in-depth description of your methodology, of your results? Can you show your analyzed results here? Like, you know, they want to know what you know. And usually an interview is the best way to tell. Like you can always read body language, facial expressions, how well an applicant will articulate things. That's what they use interviews for, to narrow down the process. The best advice that I have for interviews is to just be calm. Usually they ask just like general questions like, why do you want to be in grad school? How will you contribute to the department? What areas of research are you interested in? If you put in your CV like your research, they'll ask you about your research. Sometimes they'll try to like question you on it. There are some institutions that I've heard of, they will have like a bit of a coding part of it. They'll ask you to like code something just to see if you're familiar with the type of language that you might have mentioned in your personal statement or your CV. I heard that sometimes people can be a bit OD with these and make you do the utmost. I don't have any advice for that other than to try to stay as relaxed and as calm as possible. Luckily for my interview, there was no like coding portion. It was just they wanted to see my face and they wanted to listen to me explain like my prior research experience. So, and assuming all of that goes well in the interview process, then you have made it into grad school. Congratulations. Hopefully those were some helpful tips to help you start your application process up, and let me know in the comments what schools or universities you are looking to apply to, and if you have already applied and gotten in, let me know if any of these tips were helpful, or if you have any suggestions that you want to leave in the comments. Absolutely do that. I am looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and I'll chat with you soon. Bye.